Good morning, good afternoon, good night. This is Blackbright. And I tell you something, this is such a time-consuming project. Would you believe? I just did a video, 20 minutes, sailed through it and put all my passion and everything into it, and it didn't record. So now I'm going to have to do it all over again. So I might not have the same enthusiasm, but I'll try to get to you all the information that's necessary. Now, this video is about how, if you have an inkling that you're going to be deported, what you need to do. If you're worried about deportation, what you need to do. If there's anything in your circumstances that could make you a target for deportation, I'm going to let you know what you need to do. And because I watched a video earlier on, and it was about a Jamaican who had been deported. Now, admittedly, he had committed a crime, doing drugs, and they let him out for some reason. He wasn't sent to the detention centre. They let him out. So he was going to the school, picking up his kids, blah, blah, blah. And he goes to the school to pick up his daughter. And she, the immigration officers are there at the school. And they just whizzed him off. And now he's in Jamaica. The thing is that you need to prepare in advance. If you have an inkling, if there's anything wrong with your status at all, just prepare in advance so that, God forbid, you are deported, your partner has all the documentation it needs, all the photographs of your relationship, anything you have in joint names, anything that can prove that you've been together for, 2 to 3 years. Your children, hopefully your both names are on the birth certificate, because you're going to need to apply for under Article 8 human rights if you are targeted for deportation, or if you're, detained for deportation. Now, the thing with this is that if you haven't got about 10 grand, you might as well forget it, because to fight deportation is going to roughly cost you about that. So you have to ask yourself, is it worth paying 10,000 to some solicitors and the barristers and whoever you have to pay, and for application fees and goodness knows what else? Or can that £10,000, be better off in the hands of your Jamaican environment and community? I'm inclined to think the latter. I'll tell you something. I used to work for nearly said it. I used to work for an organisation, and they gave me the job of encouraging people who had been in the organisation for several years and years and years, and what they considered deadwood, in quotes. And they wanted to get young people in and all that kind of stuff. Younger people, or not even younger people, but newer talent. So they wanted the ones who had become complacent, who hadn't got any energy in their job, they wanted them to go back. So I had the task of talking or encouraging people from the Philippines, people from the Caribbean, people from Africa to leave that organisation and go back to the country where they lived. And it was a lucrative package. I mean, there was nothing wrong with the package because I actually took it. But the fact of the matter is that they were able to do that. It wasn't a deportation. It was like being self-deported, but being compensated for it. Now, I can't remember where I was going with that. It might come back. But the fact of the matter, the reason why I said that is because sometimes if you can think about the positives about the country that you originate from, and how that your money, if you have any, can be better utilised in that country, wouldn't it be better to leave on your own terms with your money, with the chance to access your money, and self-deport? But there again, it's hard. it's really hard because you're leaving behind your kids and your family that you've established. Anyway, I leave it up to you, because if you have a good case, you can actually win it. And that can set a precedent, but you have to bear in mind how expensive it is. And I'm going to have to read this. And also, it might not even be your fault. You could be wrongfully deported because of a failure with the Home Office. They might not be following policy. They might not have considered the fact that you have a family here, private life, partner. There might be sickness or mental illness in the family, and they're really reliant on you. You might be in a relationship for over 2 years and you have a child together. Family life would need to be evidenced. Everything would need to be evidenced, because if there's no evidence, it didn't happen. If nothing is recorded, it didn't happen. In my job that I do now, that's what they say. No point saying, oh, somebody called me, I didn't write down their name. If they called and you didn't write down their name, it didn't happen. So you need to have evidence. Yeah, so a lot of people went on the human rights argument, but we're dealing with a prejudiced bureaucracy who don't want you here. So you need to have a very, very, very strong case. Especially if you're this colour, you need to have a very strong case. Genuine case, and all of the above. You might get attorneys that are going to say, oh, I can file for... Remember, lawyers can't stop a deportation. That's another thing. So don't pay a lawyer to stop a deportation. He can't. You might have lawyers that say, I will put in an application for deportation for you. They can do that, but it doesn't mean that they can win. And they can't even do that. They have to put a permission. What is the correct term? Let me find out. Yeah, your lawyer can pay a fee. I think it's $2,500 for the initial fee. I just want to make sure I've got this right. Sorry to keep looking at these papers. But you're going to need a dedicated lawyer anyway. Somebody who's not just in it for the money. But yeah, he's going to have to ask permission to challenge the decision with that application. And then there's another application asking the judge to make a court order to stop the Home Office for deporting you. There was another one. Where is that piece of paper? Anyway, it's one that you need to speed it up. It's something where the judge needs to look at the documentation within 4 hours. And that's another $2,500. What is that bit of paper? I can't find it. I'm going to have to leave it. But anyway, I'm going to leave it. It's not really relevant. It's costing a lot of money. That's all I'm trying to say, to be honest. And there's a lot of work involved. And if the money you're giving, the $2,500, is for a judicial review. If the judicial review is refused, you have a choice for your case to be heard orally. If you want it to be heard orally, that's another $2,500. That's not including the lawyer's fees or the barrister's fees, or the application fees. That's just for the hearing. You can ask your solicitor to go to court again with a bundle of documents and argue your case before the judge. If your oral hearing is refused, then you can appeal against that, and you can go to the Supreme Court, from the Court of Appeal. But all I'm saying is, it's thousands. And I don't know your reason for staying in the country, but if I had to pay $10,000 to stay here, I prefer, especially if I lived in Jamaica, I prefer to take that £10,000 and go and try and sort myself out in Jamaica, start a little business or something. 10,000 can go far in Jamaica. It can't buy a home, but it could go towards stabilising yourself, because if they detain you, you've got no access to funds. You can't do anything. You know what I mean? And you... Ah, dear. What else? If your case is strong, You need to be here for 3 to 5 years. You came here legally. Because if you came here illegally, if you've got no visa, if you came on a false passport, you came on a boat, if you've got no records, forget it. Forget it. However, if you've been in the country for several years, if you're active in the community and you can show that you're active, you've done volunteering, you've raised money for charity, you've been involved in Pacific clubs, and you can evidence all of this, you know, you might have a chance of staying. But if you've just worked in the country, that's not enough evidence. Anyway, so that's if you got a funny feeling that you might be deported. That is what you're looking at if you're thinking about fighting a case against your deportation. Okay, I'm not telling you to give up, but I'm just saying the obstacles that you have to face and how difficult they make it. I mean, I believe they should have some kind of fund, because how do you access funds when you're detained? Are you saying that the poor family has to fund it, find 10 grand so you can stay in the country and be tracked, and when you're staying in the country they're only giving you 30 months or whatever they decide to give you? Is that what you're saying? You know, you're still on a conditional visa. You can't have no recourse to public funds. Is it worth it? I don't even know if you can work. I don't know what the limitations are. They can choose to put whatever limitations they want on it. Is that what you want? Do you want to put your family in debt like that? That's all I'm saying. So sometimes, you know, if we have made mistakes, I mean, some people, they could, I did a video on amnesty. There could be a situation where amnesty could be granted, but I don't think that's going to happen for now. You see, that's not going to happen for now. So some people could, you know, suck it and see and wait and see what's going to happen. Anyway, with regard to wrongful deportations that have been happening, in May last year, 7,000, they call them foreign students. No respect. They're actually international students, were deported because they said they cheated. Apparently there was a total of 36,000 visas they revoked under the guise that they were, you know, using proxies to sit the English test for them, only to find out later on that the machine wasn't working and they had deported 7,000 students wrongfully. I mean, that's what these people are doing, you know. It's just any excuse, and then they're always apologising and telling lies. The government talks about good character, talks about honesty, but yet they apologise for the lies they tell us. They don't know how many people were deported. 1 minute there's no deportations, then when people find out a few, oh, they admit to 63, and then, you know, somebody finds out there's a bit more, oh, well, there was 83, and then somebody finds out a bit more, then there's 160. You know what I mean? They only admit to what they get found out doing. Now, is that good character? They're asking people who come into the country that they must have good character and be honest. And they're not honest themselves. They show themselves up time and time again for being liars or distorting the truth or telling the truth by, you know, telling lies by omission. So, and that is why they're so suspicious about undocumented people, because they know that they're not honest. They know that they're being deceitful and deceptive, because people judge others based on themselves. We all know that. Judge not, lest ye be judged. So they're busy judging everybody else based on their own standards. Oh. Anyway, apart from that, I won't even tell you how that happened. Well, it was to do with a program on Panorama. Panorama did this program that showed that all these international students were cheating, getting somebody else to do the test for them. And so, of course, the government gets paranoid and starts deporting everybody. I'm not even going to go into numbers on that. With regard to other wrongful deportations. 11,800 cases of Caribbean Commonwealth nationals have been removed or detained since 2002. 83 have evidence that they were in the UK before 1973. And you know it's only 83 because people like me don't have evidence of that long stay. You know, so I have an uncle. He was actually 96. He's actually dying now. He's got cancer. But the point is that he had every document. He served in the army, and I find people who are in the army, they're very meticulous. So he has every document from 1948 when he came into the UK until now. But how many people have that? Every single document. I wish I'd taken photographs of that, or you know. Because I did interview him, and you know, some of you may have seen that interview with the Windrush. But yeah, but not everybody's going to do that. You know, when you're in the army, they discipline you, they tell you what to do and what not to do, so you know to keep every document. But anyway, so 83 didn't have evidence. 83 had evidence that they were in the UK before 1973. I'm looking at this because it's got to do with figures, which was the date the 1971 Immigration Act came into force, granting British citizenship. But they had been unlawfully detained. If they couldn't prove themselves, they would have been booted out as well. What else? 63. Yeah, I've said that bit. Guess what? The Home Office are not counting people, I'm going to say Jamaicans for now, who were deported for criminal convictions. So if they had a criminal record and they deported them, they're not factored into their deportee records. What a bloody cheek! How deceptive is that? So when they're talking about 83 deportees, there could have been goodness knows how many. Because if they're not counting those who they're deporting for, who had criminal convictions, because they're claiming that those are justified deportations, what figures are we working with? Oh, I'll tell you something. The Home Office claimed that they were deported because they lost the right to remain. That was how many? 74 out of 83 lost their right to remain because they spent more than 2 years out of the country. I bet they didn't even know they couldn't spend 2 years out of the country. But I can understand that happening. But that's only 74 out of 83. Goodness knows how many out of the 11,800 they've wrongfully deported. What else? I was just thinking about those Windrush citizens. When you think about them, they have to be in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, putting them in a detention centre. No wonder 14 have died. I don't even, I always say the Jamaicans are a resilient race, and it wouldn't be the physical that would put them down. It'd be the mental, worrying about if their rent is being paid, worrying about their mortgage, worrying about their job. That's what's going to break them. I tell you something, this place is so evil, doing that to people of that age group. I mean, why wouldn't you just allow pensioners? Allow them. But you know why they don't want to allow them? Because they don't want to pay them any pension. They don't want to pay them pension. All these people that worked all those years, they don't want to pay them any pension. So that's why they're getting rid of those lot. I shouldn't get so emotional, but I do. It affects so many people. It affects people, aunts and uncles and grandparents and all that. And it's so unreasonable and unfair and prejudicial. And they can't even get representation because, number one, they're dumped in there. Nobody knows they're there half the time. Nobody can contact them. You hear about people disappearing. How do we know they're not in bloody detention centres? We don't know. 18 deported because they could not demonstrate continuous residence in the UK. I can't, and I was born here, like I said in a previous video. Home Office received 6,507 inquiries from Windrush cases. So you know it's double that. They never tell you exactly what it is. It might even be treble that. We don't know. They reckon 3,585 Windrush citizens had been given documentation confirming their status. That's very deceptive wording. It gives the impression that 3,585 Windrush citizens have been given settled status. But you see when I say lying by omission, because why can't they say 3,585 Windrush citizens have been given documentation confirming their settled status? They're not saying that. So what is that status that they're giving them? What is it? Is it limited leave to remain? Is it indefinite leave to remain? Whatever, or is it a whatever it is, discretionary leave to remain? What kind of leave is it? And is it conditional? Do they have access to public funds, considering they've booted them out of their homes and made them homeless and destitute? Can't imagine people being so wicked. 2,272 Windrushies are under initial arrangement. I don't even know what initial arrangement is. 1,465 fall under the government's formal Windrush scheme. I don't know what that is, but I would think that they've actually accepted responsibility for those 1,462, which probably tells me that those are the only ones they're going to accept responsibility for. They reckon that the majority of applicants are Jamaicans, but there are some people from Barbados in there, India, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago. And Savage Abid is, of course, dragging out the compensation. I mean, they're quick to detain them and deport them, but these people need compensation now. How are they supposed to live? Or are they waiting for them to die so they don't have to bother with it? You know, why don't you pay them compensation? You've got stacks of money to pay for flights to Jamaica and all over the place. You should have a fund for things like this, where people have been wrongfully deported, wrongfully detained, have lost their homes, lost their jobs, haven't been able to access help, the NHS. And you've got the nerve to drag your feet over compensation. Savage Javid saying, I come from because he's Asian, he's trying to put himself in the same category as us. But he's not in the same category. He's a stool pigeon. He's just doing what they're telling him to do. And he's the face, so he's the one distributing out and every minute apologising because he doesn't know what's happening. And then those Windrush people who've been affected, they're being made to sign, a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for a fast track settlement status. Can you imagine? They can't speak and tell anybody what's going on because they've been forced to sign this non-disclosure agreement. I think it's absolutely diabolical. And I bet you, this is just my opinion, that even after they got the settlement status, if that's what they're giving them, and if they're not clued up, they might even give them a limited leave to remain. We don't know, but whatever status they're giving them, I bet they're saying, well, if you talk, or if you talk to the papers, or if you let this out, we're going to come for you, and you're going to be deported, and you're not going to have time to tell anybody. So you better keep your mouth shut. It wouldn't surprise me. They're like the bloody mafia. Oh, no disrespect to the mafia, of course. But you know what? It's just... No, the government won't give us a figure of how many they deported wrongfully or rightfully, or forced entry or forced into voluntary removal, because a lot of them, they're trying to force people to leave voluntarily. And it might sound like that's what I was doing earlier on when I'm saying, is it worth paying that 10 grand? I'm saying, just deport yourself. But the fact of the matter is that you shouldn't have to, really. You shouldn't have to. But, if you're going to lose everything, you have to wait. These are individual decisions that people have to make. They're individual decisions. And it can only apply to those who really know that they are undocumented in the UK. It can only apply to them, because then they have got nothing to lose if they self-deport, or if they at least have a plan of action in place, so that they're, making sure their accounts are in order, making sure that the money is going through, that they will have money to support themselves, and they won't feel so rejected and humiliated if and when that time comes. I mean, like I said, you could wait for amnesty, but who knows? The Brits, I don't know if they're going to do that. And, people have been asking. I remember somebody asked Andrew Holness what the deportee figures were. He said, "Oh, I don't know." How can you not know? And if it's all legit and above board, how can you not know? He's saying it's a different department. Yeah, right. Different department, my foot. The thing is that, they're in cahoots with each other, and they don't want anybody to know the real impact of what's going on. I think it's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. So we can't even imagine how many people have affected, how many people are destitute, how many people are homeless who had, a good, solid, respectable life. Sometimes I wish I could win the lottery and all of them, just build one big house for all of them. You know what I mean? Until they can get, sorted out. Don't charge them nothing for winning the lottery. What are my chances? Yeah, they're talking about lessons learned, but they're not out to learn any lessons. The only thing that they're worried about is not getting caught. They're only going to admit to when they get caught, and they keep moving the bar. If they're told, if you're told it's 63 1 minute and then you get caught out, they'll admit to another figure, and that's how it goes on. They're only going to admit to. It's all calculated. So it's not mistakes as they're claiming. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not mistakes. It's deliberate. So there's no lessons to be learnt. The only lesson they want to learn is how not to get caught out. And that's probably why they're asking people to sign those non-disclosure documents, and why they're shipping people out on planes where there's no support, no advice, and it's just them people, the immigration officers and whatever. Anyway, I've gone on long enough, and so if I got so involved in this one, you can imagine how much the original one I did earlier was. Okay, then that's all for now. Bye-bye.